Hello and welcome back inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 787, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, or what some people call the Baku Grand Prix. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now!
AKA Negative Camber. You know what we do on these weekends, and you know how we do it. It's a race review. You know what we do.
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
That's exactly what we do. But before doing that, of course, I have to bring the intelligent part of this conversation in by introducing my co-host. You know him.
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy.
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
Paul, welcome.
Thank you. That's the first time anyone's called me intelligent. Thank you, sir.
Paul, you're wickedly intelligent.
Yeah.
I do say wickedly intelligent.
Yes.
Sometimes, Paul, I bet you
Evil.
use your superpower for evil.
That's true.
This is
Very
before you were
true.
married, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it does. Paul, we had a heck of a lot of racing this weekend.
It was nuts. My wife was very nice. She was like, "Oh, I'm going to watch Le Mans now. Okay, you're going to watch Formula One now. Okay, IndyCar race on. Okay, all right." I think the straw that broke the camel's back was like, well, they're racing NASCAR in Sonoma. I should check in on that. It's like, get out!
Go fix something. Do something.
Go put that nail in that fence like I asked you.
Yeah,
No,
right.
it was good. Yeah, I got to watch a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was exciting. And I saw some friends of mine get some great success along, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And I think it was a big motorsport weekend. And what's better than that?
Well, it was the WeatherTech is at a podium, right?
Yeah, so a friend of mine, Thomas Merrill, used to work at the school in Sonoma that you attended.
Yes.
So Thomas is a Laguna Seca native. And I see him all the time. He's either coaching somebody or he's racing an LMP2 car in IMSA and everything. And he got the call last second, really, to go join the WeatherTech team for Le Mans. And lo and behold, he ends up on a podium in his first try. How good is that?
Awesome. That's awesome. That's
good
very
on
cool.
you, Thomas. Representing all of us. So
and they were driving a Porsche, right?
They were driving a Porsche, yes. Sir. And my
Porsche.
brother was actually involved in that team too, which is weird. But
that's awesome. It was great. I haven't been following it, and I know you do because you're in that business with the Aston Martin harder racing team. But I wasn't aware because I haven't been following that Penske had an LMP in there.
Right.
And I think they did really well. I mean, it wasn't a podium, but were they fourth, fifth?
They were fifth, I think. They were
maybe?
obviously LMP2 is so competitive. There were so many cars in it, and B top 5 is still competitive. But that's really for Penske. It's really just a training exercise for when they go to the big leagues next year. Right. Acura. So
yeah, right. So that was good. Also, this weekend we had an IndyCar race, and at possibly my favorite track in America, which is Road America.
It's definitely my favorite track, and a track that I wish F1 cars could race on.
Me too.
Because they would be phenomenal there.
Yeah.
But I don't. There's obviously a lot of things that have to come together for a track to be F1 worthy. Be it the facilities, be it the safety, be it hotels around, logistics, everything. But the track itself, the layout,
it's awesome.
Just be mega in a Formula One car.
Love that track. I always have since I was young. It was great win for Joseph Newgarden and Penske.
Yep.
Great result for Marcus Ericsson and Grosjean. Too. Good result for both of them. Good race. And it's just another reminder, if you are newer to F1 and you don't watch IndyCar, you should. IndyCar is a great open wheel series. It's really fun to watch, a lot of action, a lot of entertainment. And then if you attend an IndyCar race, you have a lot more access to the garages, the teams, the drivers. It just, in that case, it's a little more fan accessible, if you will.
For sure, yeah. The racing's hard and it's tight. And
it is.
That's why a lot of Formula One drivers come into it and they're like a breath of fresh air for them. They love racing in IndyCar for the freedom that it and the camaraderie in the paddock. It's not as
stodgy.
Singular, stodgy as Formula One paddock and insular, shall I say? Yeah.
Right, right. So that's true. And then finally, we had Baku. Certainly, this isn't a walk in the park street course, and the quality lap by Charles Leclerc was just awesome. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah.
The other narrative that came out of this weekend, starting early on Friday, was just how bad Mercedes was porpoising and bouncing. And that was evident in the upgrades they've gotten in Monaco or previously didn't really translate to this track, and so it looked bad on Friday, and it looked like it was bad on both cars. And it was interesting because this was an interesting weekend from the Mercedes perspective, because immediately they started to engage in this narrative over the weekend. It was about this bouncing and the dangers of the cars bouncing and the regulations. And I was just like, yes, it's this whole narrative is like a new danger awaits you in the 2022 FIA regulation, and now is the chance to begin again in a golden land of opportunity and venture. And we really need to change that. Which left me scratching my head, thinking, your Mercedes is.
They're like any other machine. They're either a benefit or a hazard.
That's it, man. At the end of the day. But I'll get into that. Don't get me on a soapbox. Well, I'm getting on a soapbox on this podcast. But, anyway, I'm gonna address it. I'm gonna touch on it since.
Yeah, we're still outside the top 20 F1 podcasts, but.
That's right. We're on the top one podcast not to listen to. But at least we're on a list, so that's good. Yeah. It's I don't know how you gleaned the world of F1 podcast, came up with a comprehensive list. And we're
I think
800.
you type in F1 podcast, and any podcast with F1 in the name gets regenerated.
It's kind of like we're 800 episodes into this over 15 years. It's like, never heard of us. Okay, that's fine.
Thanks for
I
paying
like
attention there.
Yeah, I like being the unknown F1 podcast, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I do. It's sort of a fun place to be in. So let's talk about the race in Azerbaijan.
Okay.
We'll go down
Easy
through
for
the
you to
teams.
say.
Yeah, I know. It's just so easy to say Baku, though.
I know. That's why everyone calls it Baku,
That's
right?
why everybody, yeah.
I'm not even going to attempt.
Yeah, as an American, I think to properly pronounce that, you have to remove our tongues. But anyway, so all right then, let's talk about at the top. Going to talk about who won this race. It was Red Bull.
Yeah.
You had Sergio Perez in P2, Verstappen in P1 taking the victory. Perez had a better quality, Paul. Started second, managed to get past Leclerc on the start. But Sergio had some bad luck with that virtual safety car. He missed coming into the box to box during that first virtual safety car when Leclerc did. I mean, by a matter of meters. And when Leclerc came in, and Sergio stayed out, and oddly, then he had some tire issue, which I suspect could be from the low downforce setup that they had. And then he changed a diff setting and then sort of fell back in line with the times that Leclerc and Max were setting. And that's not necessarily on brand for him, but it meant that he really couldn't keep Max behind him at the end. And excuse me, but Red Bull told Sergio not to fight Max. And some felt, it's team orders. But, I mean, to be fair, come on, once Max, he was a lot quicker. And once he got around Sergio, I mean, he put 2 seconds on him on that lap, So clearly it was faster. So Sergio settled in with Max driving to lap times for the balance of the race with the Ferraris out to protect their tires. He dove into the pits under the second virtual safety car, got new shoes to finish in second place, and took fastest lap. Ultimately, Paul, I kind of feel like Sergio, had he boxed with Leclerc under the virtual safety car, he very well may have won this race.
Right.
Because he would have had a 10-second stop, and that was much shorter than Max's 20-second stop. And ultimately, in the end, it would have been Max chasing Sergio for the win. So, we always talk about safety cars, they're always going to benefit some and hurt others. And in this case, kind of hurt Sergio.
Yep. I would say so. Yeah, I say, yeah, if he'd made it in the pits, it would have been interesting to see. We know obviously what happened to Leclerc in the end. It'd be interesting to see where he ended up,
Yeah, for
as
sure.
it laid out as it was. But if there's anyone you're going to put in a car with and try to make a set of tires last for a super long time, it's Sergio. So yeah, it's for Sergio, it's like his job internally is to outqualify Max and separate himself from Max enough that the team can't bring in those team orders. And, no matter how much Jos Verstappen jumps around and yells, they've still got to start winning races. And Sergio's got some phenomenal points now. I think he's in second in the championship now.
He's in second, yeah.
So, and he's not that far behind Max. So anything can happen. Max has a bad weekend. Sergio could easily be in the lead of the championship, not without by next week, next race. So his job is just to keep separating, qualifying really well. Max is a bit off on the pace a little bit right now in qualifying, or that's how it showed recently. And they're giving him the opportunity to kind of set stage and be ahead and not infiltrate. But yeah, that would have been the key. What does Red Bull do if Sergio has 10 seconds and he's not falling back quick enough for Max to catch him? Do they start telling him to do things that would allow Max to take the lead? That would be very tough for Sergio to give up. I don't actually see him doing that at this point. The other deal where they were fighting, was it last race, where it was a matter of he wasn't allowed to pass Max and work with their strategy, is a little different, a little easier to swallow than, hey, slow down and wave Max by.
Yeah, it was. And I agree with you, Paul. I think the mission for Sergio and his camp, his side of the garage, is, since he does seem to have the edge on qualifying of late, would be to try to out-qualify Max, start the race, and literally force the team to make those team order calls, or, put the team into position where they're having to reverse the running order, and then the whole world knows it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's not always the most appetizing thing when a team has to do that. And that would be the best thing for Sergio right now. And he has every right to do that, because, as you mentioned, Paul, he's second in the World Drivers' Championship. So he's, like you said, anything can happen. If Max has a DNF, Sergio is the man,
Yeah, so, I mean, Sergio didn't join F1 to back somebody up to win a championship. I mean, this may be his only shot this year.
That's right.
To do it. And I think, and as smiley as Sergio is, and how always he's a big team player and rah Red Bull, and inside he's trying to figure out a way of winning that world championship, no matter who Christian is backing for it.
Yeah. Sergio's a tough cookie. We've seen him be pretty tough in the past. And so anyway, watch this space. Max, on the other hand, he managed his tires very well, didn't have that wear rate issue, even though they were trimmed out for speed. Got past Sergio, and once the Ferraris were out, they were out of the equation. So he set the pace, basically, and won his 5th race of the season, missed out on the fastest lap to his teammate. And, like we just discussed, in my notes, I just put, it would have been more interesting for us to see how the early stop of Ferrari played out in strategy against Red Bulls. But nonetheless, you have to make it to the end, to finish, to win. And you couldn't really have asked for a better team result for Red Bull, who now have their foot on the neck of the championship challenge in both categories, with leading the constructors and leading first and second in the drivers' championship. So a banner weekend for Red Bull, where I think coming out of Saturday, they were like, I don't know how this will play out. And ultimately we didn't get to see.
Yeah, it's crazy how this season has turned, and just, it hasn't gone back and forth. It's literally gone from one angle to completely the other, where I think Max was nearly 2 races behind Leclerc at one point. And this
was a 55-point swing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're still early in the championship, and it's swung that far. So it's, I mean, and great for Red Bull with the Ferraris going out so early. I'm sure they just turned those engines down to 1 and just trundled around and finished the race. There was no for maybe I was surprised that they didn't allow Max to go for the fastest lap, but I think now they're feeling a little bit more comfortable in their position, and that one point doesn't seem as crucial and doesn't demand the need to turn the engine up and set a fast lap. Now you got to think a big picture, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, so I want to talk about Ferrari on this side. I know they were both DNF'd, but, they were thereabouts. So let's talk about them. You had Charles Leclerc DNF, Carlos Sainz DNF. Catastrophic day for Ferrari. Pains me as a Ferrari fan to see it. They had pole, suffered 2 DNFs with Leclerc and Sainz. Carlos stopped early on with a hydraulic issue. Charles and the team gambled with that early stop pole into the first virtual safety car. And while that ceded the lead, they felt that the strategy may put him on fresher tires late in the race to go for the win, or maybe even just put on those hard and run him to the end and let him run out, and avoid an overcut. This nearly happened. As he regained the lead and was being chased by the Bulls, but an engine failure left him out of the race. Both Charles and Ferrari taking a serious beating in the championship hunt. Such a dramatic turnaround, going from the team who looked like the ones to beat early on. Now they seem like they're now in a damage limitation program. And Paul, even worse, now they could be staring down the barrel of a engine penalty.
Yeah, this early.
Yeah, early for exceeding the 3-engine limit for the season. That's going to even add more pain to the season. So ultimately, the Ferrari engine issues may not stop. I mean, it didn't just stop with the works team, right? You had Ferrari engine issues with Alfa Romeo with the DNF. You had Ferrari engine issues with Haas suffering a DNF on Sunday as well. I don't know, Paul. There's no doubt they've got to take this week, and it's difficult to do with the Canadian Grand Prix this weekend, but they've got to figure out what's going on and reset themselves to reignite their championship challenge. Or, I mean, at this point, they're settling for second in 2022, if not worse.
Yeah, and that's definitely not what they were going for. They stepped back a little bit last year to give themselves the advantage here. I don't know if it's a matter of the Red Bulls have become so competitive that Ferrari having to stretch themselves a bit further and they're not ready for it, haven't analyzed it enough. It does seem like it's not a consistent problem. So are they getting sloppy? I'm not sure. But they definitely need to zip it up pretty quick, else this championship's going to be long gone by the time we get through the half season, maybe. I mean, It's a shame because they're ultimately an extremely competitive car. I would have loved to have seen what Charles would have done in that scenario, making those tires last. I think that probably was what they were going to try and do, because it did, 10 seconds, that by the time you make up that 10 seconds with the tires with the hard tires, the advantage isn't quite so great. And it seemed like the hard tire did have longevity, but there's that first early days of the grip of the new tire that really helps you out, and you can make gains after them. The gains minimize themselves, and then everything stabilizes. So I feel like that's what Ferrari probably would have going to do. And if they didn't, then they would have had the choice of pitting closer to the end, throwing on some super soft tires, and then doing what we've seen some of the Max do before, is just chase people down by seconds a lap and make up that deficit quick. But that 10 seconds was a very important margin to be ahead.
Yeah, it was a critical margin, and I think you're spot on, Paul, because it left them with 2 options. They could try to run long because they only took 10 seconds for hards and new tires. Presumably, you don't know if there's going to be another virtual safety car or even a safety car at that point. You don't know. So the strategy to run long on those hards with a 10-second delta, the Red Bulls may have come out later, but they would have had to catch up with Charles. Who knows how much tire they would have used to catch up. Yep. And by the time they caught up, would that straight line speed on, worn tires with Charles and more, it's hard to know. Maybe he wouldn't have won. I don't know, but unfortunately we were denied to see that because that would have been a real battle. And to your point, had they realized and that 10, 15-second lead started to erode quickly and they brought him in for fresh rubber, he ceded the position, on fresh rubber, could he have hunted Perez and Max down and
possibly see. It was a good scenario. I was enjoying
Yeah.
what was going to happen, and it was a real crying shame that the Ferrari just kind of imploded.
Yeah,
unfortunately, and some of the other teams with Ferrari engines too. So there's got to be something, some issue that they've got to get figured out very quickly.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's talk about Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton P4, George Russell on a podium with a P3. George had a good day despite the bouncing, and he managed to take advantage of the Ferrari failure to score his third podium of the year, and finish just ahead of Lewis. Lewis is in fourth, George in third. George said the car was smashing against the ground on every single corner for 90 minutes, and he said, "Wow, I'm going to sleep well tonight." It just wore him out. And he also, entering this weekend, became the first sort of to get out in front with Mercedes putting George out there, very vocal before the race, that this bouncing could be dangerous and ultimately very dangerous and something bad will happen. But I'll get back to that in just a minute. So great race for George. Podium finish. Certainly had his hands full with the bouncing car. And it still converted that. I mean, this guy is thereabout in the Drivers' Championship. He's the guy that's, been consistent, point scoring, second podium. It's just, what can you say? He's doing a great job.
He's doing a fantastic job.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not surprised.
No.
Because I think everyone knew George had a massive amount of talent. We're maybe surprised at the differential between him and his teammate, but we're definitely not surprised that George can pull this out. But the consistency is so impressive, especially dealing with the team in a bit of a turmoil, trying to get their head around a car that isn't exactly what they wanted it to be and behaving very poorly at times. He's just getting on with the job. He'll be the sounding, sound out some of Toto's thing. There's a strategy that Mercedes have underlying, and George is definitely going to buy into that. He's a Mercedes boy after all. But you just look where he's been, top 5 every single race this year in a car that is third best, which should put him out of that action for sure, and getting podiums. I mean, the team should be very happy with their choice, and George should be very happy with himself, and it's just going to keep building confidence in him, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, especially in the conditions he's in, and the team still kind of continue to say, no, he's a great, good race from George. I don't know. Anyway, I think he's doing a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Lewis dropped behind Vettel, but in his defense, Merck stacked their stops during the virtual safety car. That cost Lewis time, so that got him back, and he had to fight his way back up. It was definitely a good recovery drive from Lewis for sure, because he had a hell of a lot of work to do in a car that was basically like a bouncy castle at a children's carnival. And fighting back through that, I think, is great. Lewis managed to claw his way back up to fourth, which is a great recovery drive, to be honest, given how the car was. So from the worst case scenario to at least finishing fourth, I thought it was a good result. Yes, they inherited two spots, but still great result.
Yeah, it is. It's a decent result. Lewis isn't used to being the second guy in a stacked pit stop, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So this bouncing stuff, I'm kind of getting tired of listening about it, but I think it does look a little silly also. It looks silly watching it on TV, but it's also sounds silly. Everyone just focusing on porpoising every single race. It's like there's so much more going on that it makes F1 look a little, stupid, because they can't get their cars to just drive in a straight line on a bumpy track, so obviously it's going to get solved, and some teams have solved the issue a lot better than others, and so I don't know. I think the new rules have been pretty good in making cars more competitive, but I think this porpoising issue and basically talking point is kind of taken away from a lot of the good things that are happening.
I couldn't agree more, and just fair warning, folks, this is when I get on my rant. So
geez, should I leave?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
So, okay, Paul, you and I have been watching this sport a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen all of the politicking. We've seen the battles. We've seen the heartbreak. We've seen just about everything for decades in Formula One. So I was very interested in the narrative before the race even got started. The weekend came out, and immediately it was almost like programmatic. You had George start it. So he starts the discussion in the press and starts lobbying over the bouncing that the Mercedes are having, as that the car is dangerous and something bad will happen if the FIA doesn't solve it, right? Then he was followed by Lewis sort of dog whistling this back pain that he was having because the car is creating this back pain. You have George leading this safety claim on how dangerous it is. You have Lewis as a tangible example of the effects of the bouncing, right? Mm-hmm. So you have one driver, this is really bad, and look, you see what it's doing to us? That kind of thing, right? Then this was all amplified when Toto said before the race, Lewis may not even be able to finish the race. And the FIA needed to do something about this bouncing because everybody's bouncing and they really need to step in. So then after the race, you have Lewis exiting his car in a very dramatic fashion as it happens. And I found it also interesting that they're in the middle of F1, in the ceremony, podium ceremony with, getting ready for interviews and all that. And the F1 TV managed to switch away from that feed and show Lewis getting out or hobbling out of his car. Mm-hmm. And then with this overlay of radio message from Toto apologizing about his back, I'm so sorry, Lewis, it's terrible, and making a strong point about the car and the bouncing. I'm so sorry that we're, having to, this sort of thing. And so I'm thinking, okay, wait a minute. This is all very programmatic. I'm not buying it, folks. I'm not buying the theater. I'm sorry. Look, here's my opinion. We are 8 races into the season, and they aren't going to, quote, unlock the performance, end quote, of this car that Toto's been claiming all season long. Mm-hmm. So all along, he's like, no, the zero side pads in our design, there, we don't understand. We need to unlock the performance. It's there on paper and yada, yada, yada. You're 8 races into the season. And the reality of it is this means that they have limited choices due to the cost cap. They can't just develop a B-spec car on the fly.
Good point. Yeah.
All right? So they are stuck, folks. Now, the harsh truth is they can solve Lewis's back pain problems and George's safety concerns like that. Just increase your ride height. The cars aren't going to bounce. All right? Mm-hmm. Just make that change. But Mercedes doesn't want to do that. Mercedes wants the FIA to mandate a new ride height for all of the cars because it would be a detriment of their performance if they raised their car.
Right.
And they would be relegated to effectively the midfield in performance. So they want all the cars raised, right? So if you're newer to F1, this may sound logical, and you may suggest that I'm accusing Mercedes of politicking to lobby the FIA. And you're right. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's precisely what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's been done many times before. When Braun GP did the dual diffuser, there was a clear advantage. And the teams that didn't innovate that design were on their back foot. And they knew it heading into the first Grand Prix. And at the first Grand Prix, they were threatening litigation. They were going to have lawsuits. They lobbied the FIA to ban it due to a host of reasons, least of which was contravening the regulations. Mm-hmm. And the FIA at the time, Max Mosley looked at it and said, no, Braun simply outsmarted the bigger teams, and they allowed it. And that year, Jenson Button won the title for them.
Yeah.
All right. So I agree with Christian Horner when he said this, quote, look, you can see it's uncomfortable, but there are remedies to that. But it's to the detriment of their car's performance. What's the easiest thing to do? The easiest thing to do is to complain from a safety point of view, but each team has a choice. He said, I think if it was a genuine safety concern across the whole grid, then it's something we should look at. but it's only affecting isolated people or teams. That's something that the team should potentially deal with, end quote.
Right.
Now, if Merck were worried about the safety or Lewis's back, then raise the car height and those issues go away, even if that means that you're relegated to the midfield. But that's how F1 goes. Right. Sometimes you get it wrong.
That's the car you designed. That's the car you built. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Just, you remember, Paul, remember that McLaren that was stillborn? That car never even saw the track, folks. Mm-hmm. It was brand new. They could not get that car to work, and they quickly had to create a B spec of the previous year's car to run that season because that car was stillborn, right?
Yeah.
So Mercedes says that George, Lewis, Leclerc, even Max have all complained about the bouncing. But Max, George, Charles, Carlos, Sergio, they all of the drivers who, mind you, are at the peak of their physical condition, all hopped out of their cars with no trouble.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, Paul. I guess it's a young person's sport, I guess. I don't know. Although Alonso hopped out of his car.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right. I mean, Mercedes are making the choice to lower the car enough to get performance to, you know, they're not really on a line with Ferrari and Red Bull. They're not going to be, but it keeps them out of the midfield. But as soon as you raise the car up, it's going to make it better for the drivers, but to take that lap time away, which puts them in the clutches of the midfield, and that's not where they're want to be. So they're making that choice for Lewis to have to go through that so that they get a better finishing position. And I'm okay with them lobbying for it. I just don't want anyone to buy it because, as you said, there's been so many circumstances along, you know, the many years of Formula One, be it that a car isn't working and they wanted to claw back some of that deficit by trying to bring the other teams back to them, or the other way around, where there's a team that found something special and everyone else politic to try and, you know, bring that car back to them. So, or everyone else, usually they want to take something off rather than add something to their own, because that's always a cost thing.
Renault J damper, Ferrari Flexi 4.
Right. And eventually those things disappeared, right? But this is a little different. This is Mercedes built a car that doesn't work very well at the right height they need to run at to make it competitive. It's their individual problem, not, we see all the cars are bouncing a little bit, but everyone else is dealing with it. And I think, as said, they're going to get their head around it and gradually smooth it out. But right now, Mercedes is just trying to figure out how to stay competitive. Yep. And this is their best shot, really, of having a chance for a competitive season. Then I think the key point there was the cap is hurting them, just reinventing the wheel and reinventing that car. That is something that, you know, was obviously talked about beforehand. If you build a car that isn't quite right, you don't have a way of turning that thing around. So you better get it right first. That's right. The cap is really, you know, a strict thing for someone like Mercedes, who would normally have untold cash to try and turn it around.
If there was no cost cap, they'd solve this. They'd show up with a different chassis. That's exactly what they do. Look, I'm with you, Paul. I'm not calling Mercedes vile for trying to lobby the FIA to mandate a regulation that would mitigate their performance loss if they raise their car. That's all part of F1. That's the fun of it. That's the politicking. Right. And it's been done 100 times before, but I might add with very limited success. So I don't blame Mercedes. If I'm Toto, guys, I'm doing the same thing. If I'm literally beating the hell out of my drivers just to keep us remotely competitive as best of the rest, and I know raising the right height of my car, while good for my drivers, is going to put us in the midfield performance-wise, yes, I'm pointing at everybody's bouncing. I'm trying to get the FIA to raise everyone so I don't lose that. I totally
your bloody
understand.
hands.
Is this what you want? Yeah, I get it, folks.
Yeah,
I'm not picking on them. I'm just saying,
just calling it for what it is, right? Yeah.
In the end, I'm not buying it. Neither is Red Bull. I doubt Ferrari's buying it, and I don't think the FIA is going to buy it either. And the reality of it is you built it, you run it in a safe manner. That's on you, Mercedes. You got to do that, right? And it has been the same for Ferrari. It has been the same for Red Bull, Remember, when both front tires are falling off that Red Bulls.
Oh yeah,
It
yeah.
just it happens. It happened to McLaren. It's happened to Brabham. It's happened to Lotus. It's happened to a lot of people in Formula One. So don't get wrapped around the axle on this thing and think that everybody's against Lewis. It has nothing to do with Lewis. It has everything to do with Mercedes and the car they have.
Yep.
So that's my soapbox. That's what I'm sticking to it, and I don't blame Toto for trying to do what he's doing.
No,
folks.
no matter what series you're in, you're representing your team. You do things on the track to try and get the best.
Absolutely.
And you do everything behind the scenes you can to put your team in the best position.
Absolutely. And if I was Toto, I would be doing no different. But if I was Christian Horner, I'd be calling BS. And he read it like I read it. This is Act 1 in a play that Mercedes is trying to put on to lobby the FIA to rule in their favor. Totally get it.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about AlphaTauri. Pierre Gasly in P5, Yuki Tsunoda P15. The team boxed both cars early on, Paul, under the virtual safety car, and there were some mixed views on if this was the right strategy, as we've already talked about. But would it have worked when Ferrari did the same with Charles? I don't know. But Pierre had a refreshing return to form by making his strategy work, running fourth, Paul, for most of the race. And then he kind of lost out towards the end because Lewis had those fresher tires. Despite the bouncing, Lewis got around him. But still, P5, refreshing return on pace, looked good. Pierre looked good all weekend.
Yeah, he needs it.
He needs it because, he's on the back of that Pierre or Sergio on that 2-year extension. Pierre, I think it's a wake-up call. Okay, where am I going to go, right?
Yeah.
He needed it.
Now he knows where he's not going to go.
He knows where he's not going.
He's got to figure out where. Plan B. Yeah. Strategy.
Yeah.
Great job by Gasly. There's no doubt he's been pretty great the past 2 seasons, so it was pretty weird to see how much he was struggling this year. We know it's a new thing with all the new rules and everything. Definitely would have expected him to be behind Yuki in the points, but he was. I don't know if he still is. I didn't look at the standings, but definitely where Gasly deserves and should be at this point in time to open up some doors for him. I know you keep talking about Alpine, and maybe that is the best option for him.
Or McLaren,
because you're just stuck on a wheel at AlphaTauri at this point.
Yeah. It's a shame about Yuki too, Paul, because he was running in 6th, but then his rear wing broke in half,
that was crazy.
leaving one half up during DRS and one still down. And it was unfortunate because he was he was right there with Pierre. Had some good passes. And I was like, go Ukester, right? But he got the black and orange flag, and so he boxed on that wing issue. The team came out, and they were like, okay. And I thought, I even wrote in my notes before he boxed, I said, that's going to be, a DNF. And I thought, oh my gosh. So then he comes in and boxes, and they put gaffer tape. And the first thing I thought was,
hi, Phil Swift here for Flex Seal.
Yeah, it's put the Flex Seal tape.
They do have Flex tape. They have Flex tape.
They do. So he came in, and they were like wrapping gaffer tape around and sending back out. And I thought, oh man, there's no way he's going to be fine with it. But they were.
Yeah.
And they just told him, don't use DRS. And he still managed P13, kept him in the race. Unfortunately, out of the points. This would have been a dual points finish for him. It's a shame because I think Yuki had a terrific race going.
It is. It was a great run. And, obviously it's easy to say, oh, well, just don't use a DRS and just everything's good. But because that, obviously visually that element has been compromised, you don't know if it's about to let loose. The last thing you want is a wing element flying off to a driver behind. So even though it seemed like maybe if they just kept it closed, the FIA should have let them go, they really can't. I did think the gaffer tape took a little too long to fix it though, because me thinking in my mind, it'd be like, just put a little tape on it and say it's good and go, and just don't open the wing again, even though that tape may or may not have done anything. But it's always best to do that. We've seen, some very bad situations where pieces fly off cars into cars behind, so we definitely want to avoid that. But really unfortunate for Yuki.
So Paul, I'm curious. So in the IMSA series, at the Harder Racing Aston Martin team, So let's just run a comp here. So you guys are out there, and your rear wing on the Aston Martin is in two pieces, and maybe one part of it is flapping because the center element is broken or whatever it is.
Okay.
If you pulled in and your guys put gaffer tape around the center and rejoined the rear wing and sent it back out, would IMSA allow you to do that?
Yeah, they would.
Would they?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think the big thing is it's tough though, because obviously everything's, because that could actually give you an advantage in a way, depending on how you did it. You put a little less drag on the car because everything's homologated with GT3 and everything. The wing angles, and not the wing angles, but there's a parameter within the wing angles that you can move, but not all the way.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think their main point would be to make sure nothing's coming detached. So I think that would be fine. Sure.
Yeah, I was just curious. So, all right, let's move to Aston Martin. Speaking of. We had Lance Stroll at DNF. Why did I lose my video, Paul?
I don't know. Where'd you go? What did you say?
Well,
did Toto just send
maybe
the police?
Maybe he got upset with me. I don't know. I don't know what happened. All right. Sorry, folks. And sorry for the podcast. Sorry for the YouTube. I had a camera failure right in the middle of this podcast. That's why we are on the top 1 podcast not to listen to list.
Now you're going to send out a message that everyone's cameras should be broken, just so in podcast land, just so we can be even.
So I had to quickly find another camera, plug in it in USB, and off we go. Okay, so we were getting ready to talk about Aston Martin.
Yeah.
We had Lance Stroll, DNF, Sebastian Vettel, P6. Admittedly, 6th place is a good result for Seb, as he made up a place at the start, and then during the virtual safety car, he got another benefit. But he did overcook that corner, Paul. Gave up a couple spots, although he did that terrific spin. That was a veteran move, wasn't it?
That was good. That's way better. Did you ever watch the Aston Martin thing with Lance and Seb doing drifting? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Lance not so good.
Lance, he couldn't get on top of it. Seb was right at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did see that. That was awesome. Yeah. But anyway, he fought his way back. Got 6. I thought it was a great, good result, given Lance had a couple crashes during qualifying, and then they had to retire the car over vibrations. Not sure exactly if they found out what that was. However, and I don't know, Paul, if this is a little track specific. It could be, but I thought Seb's 6th place kind of made him faster than both the Alphas, and on pace seemingly a little bit with the Alpine. I don't know. I don't want to overplay this, but I thought that was a good sign anyway.
Yeah. No, there was no doubt. I mean, there've been good signs for Vettel recently. I mean, that one mistake, that's a crying shame. It was a good move he was making. He just outbraked himself. He wasn't pushed off or did anything. He just kind of got that braking point just that little bit wrong and sent him off. But his recovery was very efficient, should we say? And for him to come 6th after running down the road and having to spin it around, I thought was pretty darn impressive, especially when you compare him with the teammates and what a horrible weekend Lance was having. Vettel definitely showing some world champion status there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that was a good result for him anyway. Alpine, Fernando Alonso P7, Esteban Ocon P10. Alpines were trimmed out for speed, Paul, down the long straights, and that made it really hard to get around them. Even for faster cars behind him, it made him pretty hard to get around. Ocon started on the hards, and then he dove in for fresh tires under the late virtual safety car, so that minimized the loss and that he would normally have on a stop. So that benefited him, and that kept him in P10. So that was a good race for him. Unless you've got anything else to add that I don't know.
No, I think it was a good strategy by Alpine to throw the dice and say, hey, we're just going to make it hard. Because even with DRS, people were having mighty time. He was kind of a spoiler, really. Alonso was, and Ocon as well. With a lot of teams and their strategies, they figure they could, DRS would allow them to get by, but there was a lot of trains going up behind those guys, and I think ultimately it was a good move. And Ocon and Ricciardo, obviously we'll talk about in a bit, really made hay with that second virtual safety car and jumped a lot of positions that they were really that's why they were waiting. They were waiting for that opportunity, and the opportunity came, and lo and behold, he got a point anyway. So good for the team. Good strategy. The car was decent,
Yeah. Well, like you said, I think Alonso was a little more realistic. And while he did a masterful job of holding off the McLarens, he did say they were happy with the result, but clearly benefited from 2 Ferrari DNFs, and so put him in the points. But it was a good sign for they definitely have engine reliability. The pace of the engine seemed good, and I think if the chassis was trimmed out, I think maybe they'd make some good progress, and hopefully they do in development. But so not all was lost. McLaren, Lando Norris P9, Dan Ricciardo P8. So I thought it was tough for Lando. My notes are completely wrong, Paul.
Oh, okay. Did Lando win then?
Lando won. There is no.
Oh, because you got Zoe in there.
Yeah, I do. It's cut and paste error there, Paul. I was just got to keep you frosty.
This is not good enough, Todd.
It
not
is
good enough.
Oh, I've got that, Paul. Now you caught me off guard. Normally I have that.
Not good enough, damn it! Not good enough.
There you go. It's not good enough, and this is why we're a crap podcast. You're
going to have to be retrained.
I know.
Dropped from the podcast.
I know. It's terrible. What can I say?
Help me, Tom Cruise!
So I think ultimately, so you had Lando. Lando is out. Split strategy for McLaren. Lando started on the hard, so he was going long. It was kind of a case where Dan was asked to move aside, right? But they held. They kind of were holding station, and then there was some jockeying around because of split strategies. But then the reverse was paid when Dan was out in the lead, and Lando was quicker because Dan was quicker. They made him hold, and then Lando was quicker late on, and they made him hold. And Lando wasn't as I would say amenable to that situation as maybe Dan was. It was like, why? Why am I doing that? He goes, well, we're returning the favor, and he was like, well, so anyway. But they finished.
He was trying to come up with a different idea. Yeah, but that was for strategy. We're just fighting for position at this point.
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves. I don't think, as much as people thought Lando and Ricciardo would be the best buddies, I don't think that's really true. I think they get along okay. Yeah. And I think definitely it's a little tense in there purely because of Ricciardo's struggles.
Yeah,
that's right. Ricciardo is not going to, be chummy with a guy that's kicking his butt right now, and he's going to take anything he can get, like the honey badger he is. So
that's why I can't remember which driver said, well, that whole nice guy routine, that's why he's not doing well. And I'm just like, I don't think Dan's that nice guy,
No. He is a nice guy, but
he is a nice guy, but in a car is a different deal.
He's not going to give up anything.
No,
as we've seen it many times. Many times.
Yeah, for sure. Alfa Romeo, Valtteri Bottas P11, Zhou Guanyu DNF. This is going to be, it's a tough race. He retired the car with an engine issue. That was the 3rd time in 4 races. Yeah. So there's a real concern there. And it's a shame because I thought he, again, like Yuki, I thought he looked good for the time he was running. He's running the points. So that was unfortunate. Bottas completed the race, lacked the pace really to make his way through the midfield, failed to score points, which is a shame because they had a streak of 5 races running in the points. So that was a kind of a bad week on balance for Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, it wasn't, Bottas wasn't as shining as he's been, but they've had a good year so far anyway. You're going to have an off week every now and again, and this track is definitely, not the usual. So I could see that happening. I feel bad for Zhou. I think he's done a great job this year, but he's got to be careful what he says on the radio because I know it's frustrating, but when he's saying, come on guys, this isn't good enough. That's just not something you say on the radio. I don't know. I just didn't dig that so much, but I've dug what he's done so far this year up until this point, but maybe it's part of the learning process. And I'm sure, France will, take him aside and slap him around with a wet rag or something, say don't take it out on the guys that are working on your car. There's some other suppliers and that are involved in this process that you can't blame it on the team, and you shouldn't blame it on the team. Certainly not vocally out there like that. I understand the frustration, but there's no place for that, especially for a rookie. And we saw Yuki being a lot like that last year, and I don't think anyone appreciated that either.
No, I was just going to say he got a little Yuki on us there.
Yeah, he wasn't to that excess, but so nip it in the bud, but just do what you're doing, Joe, and just drive fast and keep it clean. And
that's what he's been doing all season. Yeah. Haas F1, Schumacher P14, Kevin Magnussen a DNF, and another DNF for Kevin, who was looking strong, I thought, knocking on the door points.
Very racy,
looking very racy, had some great moves. Then he just pulled over, he was battling Ocon, then pulled over with the engine problem, another Ferrari engine problem. Schumacher started last. That was always going to be a long day for him. He only managed to get up to 14th where he started. It's becoming a pretty tough situation for him with Kevin running, knocking on the door for points, him running in the back, and now rumors in the paddock this weekend about Hülkenberg replacing him, and I think that's got to be a pretty tough situation for the young German.
Yeah, that would be tough. I'm surprised it would happen. I mean, ultimately, Magnussen, he can be your line of competitiveness, but the team isn't really putting the car out there that's a top 5 or top 8 car every weekend. So I don't think they're losing a lot with Schumacher. I don't think Schumacher's his dad regenerated by any means, but I think he's doing a decent job. And I'm not sure bringing in Hülkenberg is going to offer a lot of differences. I would rather, if you're going to change someone, then bring a young guy in that's just literally doesn't have the opportunity but has a lot of pace, and there's a few of them out there on the underlings of F1. Sure. Bringing Hülkenberg really is going to serve a great purpose to Haas, but I guess it's something to do. But Magnussen is there as the old guard, and I think that's all that team really needs in that fashion.
Yeah, I agree. And finally, Williams, Alex Albon, P12, Nicholas Latifi, P15. Latifi had a couple of penalties. One wasn't his fault. The other one was for ignoring blue flags. He could only manage 15th. Albon had a better day. He was fighting the Haas too, and then trying to get close to the points. He said he felt that their pace compared to the midfield was actually really strong, and he actually felt like he was quicker than some of the cars ahead of him. Just didn't have time to get back up to the midfield. But and a Williams finishing P12, call it P14 if the Ferraris were in, still not a bad result.
Not bad. He shows the pace of the car and gets the most out of it, I think. Latifi is another matter. That's kind of
for sure
a crazy situation. I'm not sure how that's going to evolve. Obviously, you just talked about Schumacher being on the edge. Latifi is probably more so, I would think.
I would agree. Agree with that.
It's not. He's kind of had some moments, but I haven't seen any moments very recently. Certainly not this year, right?
Yeah. Tough season. All right, let's hand out some awards. The first award is always Move of the Race. Oh, yeah. So, Paul, it was tough to pick out a non-DRS move of the race or strategy. What did you come up with?
Well, and so I didn't really come up with a pass per se. I came up with an opportunity that I thought was a really intriguing thing to watch. We saw Vettel attempt it. We saw some other pull it off, and then finally Vettel achieved it and made a pass there the second time he tried it. But that pass on turn 3, I thought, was a very interesting process because it leads, that whole setup is a lap before where you're making sure you've recharged your batteries, you're not using them up until that point to give yourself the opportunity to make a pass in what isn't a super long straight and get that outside pass. I thought it was fun to watch the guys try and figure out how to make it work and making it work, and some didn't, some did. But I thought that was an intriguing aspect of the race, those passes in turn 3.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed that. I had Sergio's missed box during the virtual safety car. I think that could have been a tactical move of the race. I think that would have
put him. It was the unmove of the race.
It was the unmove of the race, yeah. Leclerc's box under the virtual safety car, I think that could have been the move of the race.
Could have, probably would have been, yeah.
I did like Vettel's spin, though. I thought that was
let's give it to Vettel for the quick 180. Why not?
You're
Yeah.
right back on. So
Great.
I'll give it to him.
Way to go, Seb.
Yeah. All right. Next award is Donkey of the Race.
We'll do it live.
All right, Donkey of the Race. I'm pretty sure we both picked Ferrari.
Yeah, I think it's painted red and it blows smoke out like you're picking the next pope.
It just sucks.
That was an awful
bad.
weekend Ferrari for the
Come
team and for
on.
Ferrari the engines. It
I
was
know.
just a nightmare.
Nightmare. And Mattia's an engine guy. Come on.
Right. And as you said, the next race is just coming up. There's not a lot of time to turn it around and analyze. You got to move on.
I know. And it pains me. I'm a Ferrari fan. I'm like,
And it's always a big emotion.
it's always a big emotion, and it's
Very
so
much
tough.
so.
But, you know, when they suck, they suck. That was terrible.
Yeah, terrible.
It was. It's horrible, this idea. Knucklehead. All right, let's go to the last award, which is Drive the Race. Good God. That's right. Drive the Race, Paul.
I'm giving it to Russell.
Me too. That's who
Yep.
I picked.
I
George
think
Russell.
he's silently just performing at a very high level right now and getting the most out of that car. He's not going to fight the Ferraris, he's not going to fight the Red Bulls, but he's certainly putting him head and shoulders above the rest.
Yeah,
feel.
I totally
Yeah.
agree. I mean, look, if they're right and these Mercedes cars look like they're literally killing the drivers, then finishing on the podium is awesome.
Yep.
I thought it was a great drive from George. He's had a great season all along.
Yep.
And I feel like I'm the sound of one hand clapping over here. I'm not taking anything away from Lewis, and George is out in the media saying, well, you know, if they get this car problem solved, Lewis is going to be a different beast. Yeah, I'm sure he would be. But George is being a beast in this car.
Yeah. So give him a better car. What's George going to do?
What would George do with a better car? Right?
Yeah. It's hard to say. You know,
Tough.
Lewis, obviously, he's been in intense battles for championships for, you know, nearly a decade at this point. And can you forgive him for not maybe being as better
course.
Lewis as he could be?
Of
I
course.
think maybe.
Yeah.
You know, if they do turn that car around, we'll see Lewis back in there. But I think it just psychologically is just a little bit off because of the motivation is down just a little bit because he sees that there's not a lot for him to achieve other than, you know, running around in 5th and 6th.
It's you veterans out there will know what I'm talking about. 2005, 2006 at Ferrari with Schumacher and Fernando winning, those two on the track. So it you know, things change, team, car can change, which it has for Lewis. When your car starts experiencing things like this, it's hard to keep your motivation.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on right there with Lewis, and so I'm not taking the piss. I'm not, you know, leveling off at him. You know, it is what it is. But all of that withstanding, we shouldn't be over here playing down what George is actually doing.
Right.
I think what George is doing is phenomenal
Yep.
by anyone's measure, and I think I don't know. I find myself disagreeing more and more with Toto a lot because he just kind of plays it all down, and it's like, all right, whatever. You do you, Toto. It's not how I would manage it, but anyway. All right. Well, that's what I think. All right, let's do some mailbag.
You've got mail.
Shumi in Toronto asked this, Paul. He says, hey, guys, for decades, drivers have teamed up with various artists to come up with some stunning helmet artwork. I agree. Whether that be, you know, their go-to regular design or a variety of one-offs in special races like Monaco, Abu Dhabi, etc. With the advancement in wrap materials and their uses, have the original beautiful airbrush designs and artwork become sort of a thing of the past? Does anyone go to the trouble or time of consuming airbrush techniques, or are these current designs all being done with wraps and various stick-on colored cling film and vinyls? Or are they a combination of both? I've been meaning to ask this for months now. Cheers, and keep up the awesome job you guys do week in, week out. Well, thanks, Shumi in Toronto. So I'm not a racer, Paul. I don't have a helmet. You do. You've got a cool James Hunt-inspired helmet that I love a lot. And so when the guys in IMSA, are they getting their helmets wrapped, or is there any?
No, they're not getting wrapped. There's a lot of money spent and a lot of, you know, there's a lot of good helmet painters, and the last thing those guys would ever do is start printing out stickers and sticking them on. I mean, I think to some degree there's some, as you said, maybe there's a hybrid every now and again, some certain
like
things
a one-off deal.
Yeah, but I think for the most, it's everything is an evolution.
Yeah.
But there's definitely not like they're printing a vinyl on the printer and just wrapping over the helmet. There's still a lot of intricacies and artistry goes into designing a helmet. Geez, I mean, it's so expensive to get your helmet painted. It's nearly as expensive as a helmet, and they're done pretty expensive unto themselves. I mean, a decent class helmet that you have to wear in IMSA is easy over $10,000 for a helmet.
Wow, you're kidding.
And to get your helmet painted is probably $5,000 minimum, I would say. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What kind of helmet do you wear?
Well, I've got a couple. My latest was, what is that one? It's just the karting helmet. So I just bought one of those powerboat racing helmets because it was cheap and easy. So
it wasn't 10 grand.
It wasn't 10 grand. No. If I had to go racing IMSA, I would need to be spending 10 grand again.
You're gonna have to crack out your Schubert.
Yeah. I always like bells. Bells are good. Bells are pretty big with our team. That was my first helmet, was a bell, but I liked OMPs were good. I've had several helmets, never really stuck with one, and it's whatever the opportunity. I'm cheap,
Yeah, sure.
So whatever was going free was what I was.
Peter Windsor was a big Arai.
Yeah,
fan. He talked about
it's
Arai
really
helmets
Arai and bells seem to be prevalent in GT racing for sure.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, good question. Let's next one. Miles asks, how does your approach differ when learning a street circuit versus a normal purpose-built track? How much can the road surface change from year to year? Now, Miles, I am not the guy to ask, but I'm glad to tell you
question, though.
that I have the guy to ask on this podcast. So how's that happen, Paul? Talk us through it.
Yeah, obviously with a road course, you can experiment a lot more very quickly, and you can. If you make a little mistake, you run out a little road, you kick up a little grass, etc. So your approach to the track has to be attack and pull back, right? Because the consequences are not very high. So, and that's a quicker way of getting to your ultimate lap time. Is you go over and then you click it back a couple. And then you're always finessing what you're doing, how to get more entry speed out of mid corner, out exit, etc. But ultimately, you can get pretty close to what time you can achieve, not calculating for changing the car, etc. if you attack and then pull back. Now, with a street circuit, you cannot do that. You cannot attack because the attack is you're whacking the wall. So you've got to put layers and layers upon layers upon layers. Just gradually eking out. You're turning in. You'll initially start turning in, a little early. You'll miss the apex a little bit, and you'll give yourself a little room for error. And gradually, when you get your eye in, you're trying to connect the dots closer and closer to the finer edge of brushing against the wall as you enter the corner and brushing as you exit without damaging the car. But it takes a while, and that's why places like Monaco, they'll send them out and they'll do a lot more laps than you would think they would need to do, purely because it's definitely that relationship between the driver, his eyes, the speed, and how the car's working. And as I said, you've got to start under the potential and just gradually build up, because as soon as you go over that, you tip over, that's when you start damaging the car. And so you really just build up till you get to the point where you think you can consistently get a lap time and just use as much of the road and just very, very little margin of error. And that's how you get to the most out of the car on a street circuit. And sometimes it can take a really long time. And if you've got trouble with the car on a weekend and you don't get those laps in, those seeing your eye in laps, you can be behind for the rest of the race. You just can't make up for that time.
Yeah, and the road surface changing year to year, a lot of that has to do with where that track is.
Yeah, where it is, how the
and
climate changes. If there's road work done, on a street circuit, on a road circuit, they'll repave it or they won't. They'll patch some every now and again, like Mid Ohio has had some patches and some things change, but road circuit can change dramatically depending, it's had a whole year of road work, people driving on it, people crashing, dropping stuff, the facilities just changing. So you just got to be very, very wary. I think, the street circuit is more likely to change from race to race if you visit it year after year than a road course.
Yeah.
Unless there's a big fundamental change like repaving Spa or repaving Watkins Glen or et cetera. Yeah.
Right. Good question, Miles.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, Steve asks, the Sky team seemed to really be suffering with the absence of Lazenby, Kravitz, and Brundle in Baku. Discuss? ? And Steve said, my view is that an anchor to tie it all together is missing, and I'm not convinced Naomi adds any real value. Reference track walk communications during free practice, etc. And Paul, you've been watching the F1 TV, right? Not
right. So
I've
been suffering through that just for this podcast. So I've got the other side of the commenting range to dwell from. Yeah. So
we cover. Steve. Well, I'm not going to lie to you. That's exactly was going through my head this entire weekend, that they're really missing, Ted and Martin, and thankfully they had PDR there because Anthony Hamilton was doing Le Mans call, so Ant wasn't there either. But they thankfully had PDR and Crofty, which is good. But yeah, I agree with you. I think they're definitely felt. That void is definitely felt without Ted, definitely felt without Brundle. If you're a big Simon fan, that's good. I agree. He kind of pulls all that together and pulls those narratives together, and that's his role. I think Jake Humphreys used to do that prior, and so that's an important role. I'm head scratching on Naomi. I don't understand. I'm not even sure where, because she's not a broadcaster at all. And it's like word salad, and it's a lot. It's like talking a lot about really and saying nothing, right?
Right.
Whereas who's the woman that they got over on the F1 team? I think she's terrific.
Yeah.
But she's a broadcaster.
Yeah, and I bigged her up. I can't remember her name, unfortunately, and I even sent a message to her saying that was a great job. Yeah, she was great. I mean, there's no excuse. I don't care, who you are, your gender, whatever. You just have to bring experience and expertise, and which Brundle and Crofty and all those people bring, whether you like them or not, in different situations, but you can't replace that. And
no, you got like PDR, Ant, Martin, and look,
Jensen
I'm not
sometimes.
Jensen I think is terrific, and Damon Hill, he's I'm a little, I don't know, Damon drives me nuts a little bit, but whether you like PDR or Ant personality or whatever, those guys are on it. I mean, they get it, and they unpack the sport.
And they call it like it is.
Call it like it is, and they unpack the sport. And so does Martin. Yeah. He gets it. But and I don't know how much actual racing experience Naomi has. Maybe, she's done Formula W or whatever it might be. But these guys have a lot of racing under their belt. And so then you say, well, okay, but, neither does the gal over on F1 TV. Well, no, but neither does Nats or Rachel. But they're broadcast professionals, right?
And they do their work. They understand it. They've been engrossed in it. You don't have to have been a Formula One driver, but you do have to be a Formula One super enthusiast.
Yeah, and a professional broadcaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
know how to present it too.
Yeah, and so that's kind of the challenge that they've got, I think, with her, is that she's not a professional broadcaster, and I don't know how much racing experience she has, but that's not working from my standpoint. Whereas Nat's totally works. She's great at what she does. Rachel's great at what she does. Good interviews and stuff like that. The young woman over on F1 TV is really good.
Yep.
I think she does a great job. So, I'm not picking on Naomi for that. I think
Maybe I was watching the better broadcast this week. It sounds like.
Well, you might have been, yeah. Although PDR was good, but he's always good. But anyway, I agree with you, Steve. So, all right, well, that does it. That's what we think about the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, but let us know what you think. You can do so by going to theparcfermé.com, sharing your opinion. If you like this podcast, go over and give us some love at iTunes and give us a good rating. And,
Tell Jalopnik they're wrong.
Yeah, right. And, if you're out there writing a top 20 list of F1 podcasts, who knows?
Please consider us for your boards.
I'm not worried about it. It's Jalopnik, man.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you to our Patreon supporters. We could not and would not do this podcast without you all, and incredibly grateful for your support, and I mean that. And I know Paul and Grace is as well. So thank you so much for that. Paul, you're not getting off the hook, my friend.
What? I don't get another weekend off?
No, you do not.
I got plans.
Sir. You're going to have to tell your wife to wait, because after a 2-year hiatus, we are going back to Canada.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Love it.
Great track. Lots
great
of
track,
history.
Great event. Great fans.
Yeah. Great fans, man.
Yeah.
And, people...
Love the Canadians. I'm going there soon myself, actually. We're going to Mosport.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So send pictures, post pictures. But yeah, and sometimes for those newer to F1, Canada has an amazing history in Formula One. It's been on the calendar just about as long as any of those other, quote, legacy tracks. So it's been there for a long time. The Canadians love the race, and so anyway, it'd be great. So next weekend, Paul and I will be back to unpack the Canadian Grand Prix, and we'll see you then. So until that time, next week when we do it all over again about Canada, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.